Welcome to the Daily Vibecasting. Today, the C-suite goes to China, while America's top chipmaker gets benched. The SpaceX IPO targets a record-shattering $2 trillion debut, and we are tracking the explosive reality of AI code writing.
Oh man, that AI code stuff is just wild today.
It really is. So we are taking a deep dive into the underlying currents of today's markets, technology, and culture. The mission here is really simple.
Right.
We want to cut through the absolute noise of, these macroeconomic levers, the capital markets, and our tech infrastructure. We want to make sure you, listening right now, know exactly what is real and, well, what is just hype.
Exactly. And if there is one glaring thing today's data reveals, it is this massive, almost blinding disconnect.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, we are tracking an incredible gap between what the market is cheering for on the surface and the chaotic second-order effects bubbling right underneath. It seems like everyone is just looking at the vibe, Almost no one is looking at the hard math.
Okay, well, let's unpack that by starting at the very top of the global food chain.
Let's do it.
We're talking about the intersection of state power and corporate survival, because there is a massive state visit coming up. The president is heading to China for a major summit.
Right, the big delegation.
Yeah, and the delegation he is bringing, it is an absolute powerhouse. You've got the heads of Apple, Tesla, BlackRock, plus the CEOs of Visa, MasterCard, Boeing, Citi.
It's heavy hitters only.
Exactly. But the glaring omission the guy explicitly left off the invite list is NVIDIA's CEO.
Which is fascinating because that omission is the actual story here.
Right.
I mean, why do you invite finance, aviation, and consumer tech, but you completely ice out the premier semiconductor leader on the planet?
Right, it seems counterintuitive.
It does.
Yeah.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, NVIDIA is facing acute pressure right now from U.S. export controls. I mean, they literally had to design the H20 chip model, which involves intentionally physically bottlenecking their own technology's interconnect speeds.
Wow, just to comply with the rules?
Exactly. Just to comply with restrictions on advanced chip sales to China. So by benching NVIDIA, the administration is making a very calculated choice.
They're going for the easy wins.
Yeah, they are prioritizing immediate, arguably easier trade wins, like agricultural exports or consumer goods, over the incredibly messy, high-stakes complexities of the global chip war.
I hear that, but I have to push back a little. Isn't this just the administration playing it safe?
How do you mean?
Well, if we think about it mechanically, it feels like fielding a sports team of pure defense because your star striker is too politically controversial to put on the pitch right now.
Ah, I see what you're saying.
Right. You don't want the semiconductor debate blowing up the broader trade negotiations before they even begin.
Well, it is playing it safe for the optics of the trip, absolutely. But let's look at the second-order effect of that safety.
Okay.
You are going into a summit to discuss the future of global supply chains and rare earth minerals without the one company that actually powers the entire global AI infrastructure.
It's a huge blind spot.
It really is. It shows a preference for diplomatic smoothing over resolving the structural friction that is actually driving the tech Cold War.
So we see the government ignoring the long-term reality of the chip war for a quick win.
Pretty much.
But it's not just politicians faking it until they make it. We are seeing the exact same dynamic play out with domestic economic policy. Let's look at the beef tariffs.
Oh yeah, this is a perfect example.
The administration is planning to temporarily reduce tariffs on beef imports to combat record-high grocery inflation. Now, if we strip away the politics for a second and just look at the agricultural data...
Which is grim.
It is. The U.S. cattle herd is currently at a 75-year low. We've had massive historical droughts, skyrocketing feed costs, and the physical supply simply does not exist.
Right, because the biological reality of herd rebuilding takes years. A cow has a 9-month gestation period, and it takes another year and a half before that animal goes to market.
You can't rush biology.
Exactly. You can't just flip a factory switch and double output. But look at the mechanism of this tariff policy. Easing tariffs brings in cheaper, subsidized foreign beef.
Which people love at the grocery store.
Oh, absolutely. It helps your consumer vibes today when you are standing at the grocery checkout. But what happens to the domestic rancher?
They get squeezed.
They get crushed. They are already bleeding capital from elevated feed costs and bone-dry pastures. Now they have to compete with a flood of artificially cheap imports.
So it's another quick fix.
It is a classic Band-Aid on a structural supply chain fracture. You temporarily solve the inflation metric for this quarter, but you accelerate the bankruptcies of local ranchers potentially hollowing out the domestic agricultural base for the next decade.
Wow. So you might feel great getting a cheap steak today, but you are structurally paying for it tomorrow.
Exactly.
That theme of short-term fixes versus long-term resilience is literally everywhere. Let's pivot from government policy to how the capital markets actually price long-term execution.
The Indian CEO data.
Yes. There's this backtest of an old joke from Michael Milken. He once joked that if a U.S. company replaces a U.S.-born CEO with an Indian-born CEO, he just buys the stock.
It's a famous joke on Wall Street.
Well, someone actually ran the data over the last 15 years, and the results are mind-blowing. That specific portfolio would have 50x'd your money. It's a 30% compound annual growth rate.
Let's pause on that math for a second, because a 30% compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, is essentially unprecedented over a 15-year horizon.
It's huge.
It completely obliterates the S&P 500's 14%. I mean, you were looking at a portfolio anchored by Microsoft, Google, Adobe, Arista Networks, and MasterCard.
It's a tech-heavy hitter list.
It is. And what's fascinating here is parsing out the why. Obviously, this is a correlation, not some magical causal spell. But think about the extreme selection filter at play here.
Right.
An immigrant executive faces a brutal, multi-decade obstacle course to reach the C-suite of an American mega-cap company.
Right. They have to navigate the H-1B visa lottery, extreme educational competition, and inherent systemic biases just to get in the door.
Exactly. The level of attrition is staggering. The sheer operational excellence required to rise through those ranks means by the time they get the top job, their risk tolerance, their patience for long-term planning, and their ability to execute under pressure have been uniquely forged.
They've been through the fire.
Yeah. A traditional legacy candidate simply might not have been pressure tested in the exact same way.
Okay, I love the selection filter argument, but I have to ask, are we mistaking the hardware for the operating system here?
What do you mean?
I mean, did Microsoft boom simply because the entire global cloud market expanded, making it an inevitable rising tide? Or is Satya Nadella the actual source code of their success?
That's the million-dollar question. It is always a convergence of both, but the market heavily prices in the executive's ability to navigate that rising tide without crashing the ship.
Fair point.
And speaking of the market pricing and execution, the expectations we are seeing right now are reaching historical, almost terrifying extremes.
Oh, if we're talking about extreme market pricing, we have to look at the prediction markets right now.
The SpaceX numbers.
Yes. The odds on the SpaceX IPO are pricing in a reality that doesn't even exist yet. Prediction markets are giving a 54% probability that the upcoming SpaceX IPO will close above $2.2 trillion.
Which is just a staggering number.
If that happens, it passes Saudi Aramco as the largest IPO close in human history. And adding fuel to that fire, SpaceX just posted a successful launch rehearsal at Starbase.
Yeah, the visuals on that were crazy.
Stunning. They loaded over 5,000 metric tons of propellant, that's over 11 million pounds, onto the fully stacked Starship and Super Heavy V3 vehicles, just cryogenic venting everywhere.
The physical engineering is undeniably stunning. But let's bring some deep cynicism to the capital market side of this.
Please do.
Private market shares currently imply a valuation of around $1.3 trillion. So the public markets are anticipating a nearly $1 trillion premium upon listing.
That's a massive jump.
Right. Let's break down what a $2.2 trillion multiple actually means. At that price, the market is assuming flawless execution of Starlink's global monopoly, perfectly ignoring any future regulatory roadblocks.
Right.
And it is completely pricing in Starship's multiplanetary logistics network for the next 50 years. I mean, is the retail investor going to get crushed buying into that hype?
Because the risk is so high.
Exactly. The execution risk of literally colonizing Mars is astronomical, yet the market is valuing it like a mature, predictable software-as-a-service company.
It is the ultimate market leader's premium. And when you have a leader that dominant, you inevitably get the copycats trying to capture a fraction of that premium.
Oh, the legacy auto pivot.
Look at what is happening in legacy auto right now. Ford officially introduced Ford Energy. They are attempting to clone the Tesla Megapack.
Of course they are.
It is a 5.45 megawatt-hour liquid-cooled battery energy storage system assembled in the U.S., targeting grid and industrial uses. They are planning to have units available by late 2027.
This is corporate margin chasing at its most transparent. I mean, think about the mechanics of what Ford is trying to do here. Legacy automakers struggled immensely to execute basic electric vehicle scaling. They couldn't get the over-the-air software right. They struggled with thermal management. They couldn't get the unit economics right.
That's true. It was a rough rollout.
So what makes Ford think they can suddenly pivot and dominate the highly complex industrial energy grid?
Because they see the billions Tesla is printing with their energy division, and they want a piece of it.
Yes, but Tesla built the Megapack from a foundation of first principles engineering. They control the bespoke software, the advanced thermal management, the cell chemistry.
They own the whole stack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ford is literally just buying off-the-shelf components, throwing a blue oval logo on it, and trying to bolt a high-tech energy division onto a century-old combustion engine bureaucracy. It is a classic case of chasing the market leader's playbook without possessing a single strand of the leader's underlying engineering DNA.
So we keep seeing this massive tension between the hype of a new market and the grueling, unglamorous reality of actually executing the infrastructure.
It's a recurring theme.
And that tension isn't just happening in energy or space. It is the defining story of the tech sector, going all the way back to the dot-com boom.
And understanding that historical parallel is critical to understanding what is happening with AI right now.
Right. Mark Andreessen brought this up recently. He broke down the 2000 dot-com crash to three distinct factors.
Which were?
An industry-wide overestimation of internet growth rates, companies mostly just selling to each other, and a massive debt-fueled telecom infrastructure overbuild.
Sounds familiar.
Right. But he asks a really provocative question. Was it actually a bubble, since the internet dreams ultimately did all come true in time?
If we connect this premise to today, the parallels to the AI data center boom are undeniable. We are pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into building out massive GPU clusters and the energy infrastructure to power them.
It's a gold rush.
It is, but look at the actual revenue models right now.
Yeah.
AI companies are largely just selling compute, API access, and enterprise software to other AI companies.
Just bouncing the money around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is a closed-loop economy.
Yeah.
Money is just circulating inside the tech echo chamber.
Let me stop you right there and challenge that.
Go for it.
If the plumbing gets built, and it eventually changes the world like the massive fiber optic overbuild did for the internet in the late 90s, does it actually matter to you and me if the first generation of AI plumbers goes bankrupt?
That's a fair question.
The physical data centers remain
The infrastructure is...
permanent, right?
It matters intensely to the capital markets, sure. But more importantly, it matters to the structural integrity of the software we are building on top of it.
How so?
Because right now, the digital plumbing we are building with AI is terrifyingly fragile.
You're talking about the code itself. We have a great example of this. There's a comparison going around between two pieces of software.
The package managers.
Yeah. First, there's a human-written package manager called Oove. It has 350,000 lines of Rust code and only 73 unsafe calls.
Okay.
Then you have the AI-translated port of another software called Bun, which was completely translated using large language models. It is bloated to 681,000 lines of code, and it has over 13,000 unsafe calls.
We need to explain what an unsafe call actually does mechanically. For those who don't write in Rust, the language's entire core value proposition is memory safety.
It stops crashes.
Right, it prevents your computer from accidentally leaking memory and crashing. An unsafe call is basically a developer telling the compiler, hey, turn off your safety checks, disable the seatbelts, I know what I'm doing.
Which is fine if you're an expert human.
Exactly. But when you use AI to vibe code and automatically translate massive code bases, it takes lazy shortcuts. It preserves these incredibly fragile, low-level interactions with older C and C++ libraries.
So 13,000 unsafe blocks is bad.
It isn't a code base. It's a digital house of cards waiting for stiff breeze. The invisible technical debt we are accumulating in real time is staggering.
And developers are realizing this risk isn't just theoretical. There was a viral meme of a washing machine violently exploding, and it was used to describe OpenAI's new Daybreak cybersecurity launch.
I felt it.
The core idea behind Daybreak is letting their latest model scan and automatically patch entire enterprise code bases.
Which is terrifying.
The fear is exactly what you just described. Letting an LLM rewrite your foundational infrastructure to fix a minor bug might introduce catastrophic and visible instabilities that take down the whole system.
It is the blind automation of risk. We're treating AI like a seasoned senior engineer.
When it's not.
Not at all. Right now, mechanically, it acts more like a highly confident, caffeinated intern who writes code at light speed but has absolutely no understanding of the structural, load-bearing walls of the application.
But we have to balance that engineering dread with the consumer upside because on the consumer end, it is undeniably working.
It's definitely feeling different.
Sam Altman pointed out that the new ChatGPT update, with its new personality and personalization features, feels like a fundamentally new thing.
Even with the weird glitches.
Sure, there were those viral hiccups where the model acted like a goblin because of a bizarre training artifact, but the feeling of talking to a distinct entity has crossed a threshold.
It has.
And to prove how empowering this is for the average person, there's a story of a 16-year-old who vibe coded a running app in a single weekend using AI. The app literally lets users claim real city streets as their territory just by running through them with their phone.
The gamification aspect of that is brilliant because it solves a real human motivation problem.
Bet.
But again, look at the second-order effect for you, the listener, and your career.
Okay, what's the risk there?
If a 16-year-old with zero formal computer science background can build a geographic persistent territory capture application in 48 hours using an LLM, software engineering is no longer a moat.
Wow. The barrier to entry is gone?
The ability to write code is becoming commoditized instantly. If your company's entire value relies on basic software execution, that value is evaporating.
So what's left?
The only defensible moats left will be community, brand trust, and proprietary data. The raw code itself is rapidly becoming worth zero.
Which perfectly transitions us into our final theme today. Whether it's developers ignoring technical debt because AI makes coding fast, or consumers ignoring basic economics because of short-term vibes, the human disconnect from reality is the ultimate wild card in all these systems.
It always is. Human behavioral denial is the one variable the financial models can never quite price in.
There is a perfect encapsulation of this going around social media. A guy posted about a viral video of a woman claiming gas prices don't affect her because, no matter what the price per gallon is, she always just puts a $20 bill in her tank.
Oh, I love this one. He sarcastically called her my quant.
Exactly.
It is hilarious on the surface, but it is a profoundly accurate metaphor for the retail economy. This is the exact vibes over math logic that dominates everyday consumer behavior.
Let's break down her math.
Let's look at the actual mathematical reality, the second-order effect.
Right.
Because the price per gallon is higher, her $20 buys less physical fuel.
Right.
Mechanically, she has to make more frequent stops at the gas station, she restricts her overall travel radius, and she is essentially dollar-cost averaging into a rapidly depreciating asset.
It's the illusion of stability.
It is the perfect, visceral illustration of how the general public ignores the compounding, stealthy destruction of inflation.
Right.
The nominal dollar amount, that $20 bill, feels exactly the same in her hand, so she denies the mathematical reality that she is getting poorer.
And we laugh at that, but let's contrast that consumer vibes math with the supposed precision of institutional capital.
That should be good.
Michael Saylor is heavily promoting a digital credit product called STRC. He's boasting it has a 2.53 Sharpe ratio, which completely beats leading hedge fund, multi-strategy, and macro funds.
A 2.53 Sharpe ratio.
Yeah. He's offering zero management fees, daily liquidity, and no lockups. He literally calls it engineered for risk-adjusted performance.
Okay, we need to pause here.
Please do, because for those who don't live in hedge fund land, what does that mean?
A Sharpe ratio basically measures how much risk you have to take to get a certain return. A 2.53 is astronomically high. It's like saying you can drive a race car at 200 miles an hour without wearing a seatbelt, and mathematically the formula says you will never crash.
That sounds physically impossible.
That sets off immediate alarm bells. Whenever I hear the word engineered next to a 2.53 Sharpe ratio in the crypto space, the sirens start blaring.
Why?
Because a Sharpe ratio that high implies massive, consistent returns with virtually zero volatility. But in structural financial markets, you cannot destroy risk. You can only hide it or transform it into something else.
So the risk is just buried somewhere.
Exactly. Is this truly a magically risk-free, fee-free digital yield? Or is it structurally hiding massive tail risk that will blow up the second the market turns? It aggressively echoes the algorithmic engineered yields we saw completely implode in previous crypto cycles.
Right. The whole vibes over math thing isn't just for retail consumers.
Not at all. Institutional math can be just as blindly delusional as the $20 gas logic if the underlying assumptions of the formula are fundamentally flawed.
It really is a psychology of survival issue at its core. How do we navigate a world where the hard math and the cultural vibes are completely divorced from each other?
There's a huge societal problem.
There's actually a new book exploring this called Suicidal Empathy, which is getting a lot of attention. Even Elon Musk enthusiastically endorsed it. It explores how excessive empathy in Western societies is actually undermining our evolutionary self-preservation instincts.
That's a fascinating premise.
We are culturally conditioning ourselves to actively override our deep biological imperative to survive in order to appear socially virtuous.
Which raises a crucial question about how you, as an individual, process threats, whether they're economic, geopolitical, or societal.
Right.
If our cultural programming actively penalizes logical self-preservation in favor of appearing virtuous, or, in the case of the capital markets, in favor of appearing endlessly optimistic, we completely lose our grounding in reality.
We just ignore the warning signs.
We stop doing the math because the math is uncomfortable.
But the hard math and the hard sciences don't care about our comfort, and they are still out there, quietly doing the real work. Just look up.
Oh, the space images today.
Yes, there's an absolutely mind-bending backyard photo taken using a modified telescope. It shows a Jupiter-sized mass of plasma suspended 100,000 miles over the surface of the sun.
It's incredible.
It is a stunning, terrifying reminder of the physical scale and violence of the universe. And simultaneously, NASA is live-streaming the SpaceX cargo launch carrying the Spark experiment to the International Space Station.
What's the Spark experiment doing?
They are evaluating how microgravity fundamentally alters red blood cells and the spleen. The goal is to protect future astronauts from space anemia on actual physical missions to the moon and Mars.
And that right there is the perfect grounded contrast to end on.
How so?
Because while we spend our time debating AI vibes, laughing at exploding washing machine memes, and living in economic denial, actual physical phenomena are happening.
Real work is getting done.
Hard biomedical research is quietly, rigorously advancing human survival for deep space. There is no hype, there is no vibe coding shortcut, there is just the brutal, unforgiving, structural math of astrophysics and human biology. That, ultimately, is the real alpha.
So, to synthesize today's deep dive for you, we are watching a world rapidly split in two. At the geopolitical level, we are choosing short-term diplomatic optics over resolving the messy reality of the chip war.
Yeah.
In the markets, we are pricing companies like SpaceX for multiplanetary perfection, while legacy automakers try to fake their way into the industrial energy grid. We are building our entire AI future on a fragile mountain of technical debt.
And ignoring the foundational cracks.
Right. And consumers are trying to navigate the compounding destruction of inflation with deeply flawed mental models.
Based on all these converging trends, here is my specific prediction for tomorrow.
Let's hear it.
We are going to see a massive, painful market divergence. The tech companies relying purely on vibe-coded AI products are going to start facing severe security reckonings and structural application failures.
The technical debt is going to come due.
Yes. Meanwhile, legacy auto stocks might take a serious hit as the actual brutal capital expenditure trying to build real industrial energy grids finally hits their balance sheets.
Right.
The hype premium is going to completely evaporate for the copycats.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. Look at your own life, your portfolio, and your work right now. Where are you blindly accumulating technical debt by relying on automated systems you don't really understand?
Or where are you leaning on flawed mental models?
Exactly, like the $20 gas logic. Where are you relying on vibes instead of sitting down and looking at the hard math?
The math always wins eventually.
That's all for today's analysis. Stay curious, stay sharp, and we will see you tomorrow on the Daily Vibecasting.